This is something that should have happened 20 years ago. 20 years ago, we'd have been having this discussion. It'd have been a bipartisan position. Nobody would be complaining. They would say that the president is doing a great job to secure our homeland. Now, because it's President Trump, you know, they just want to complain about it.
Trump has officially invaded Greenland, and military analysts are calling this the most stunning Arctic territorial operation in modern history. This is breaking news, so stick around and hit that like button to stay updated and what's going on around the world. There have been lots of AI bots spreading fake news, but we're not one of them, so let's get into what Trump has done so far in Greenland.
They're not building those icebreakers for fun. They're building them in order to be able to gain control of the Arctic. And the president knows that. And look, this is public knowledge. And so if you're on the East Coast, you want a stronger presence in Greenland.
For months, tensions over Arctic sovereignty have been escalating quietly behind diplomatic language. But 5 minutes ago, everything changed. US military assets are deploying to secure Greenland, and Denmark's government is in absolute crisis mode. It's honestly hard to believe we're witnessing an American military operation to claim territory from a NATO ally. This isn't just about Arctic resources or symbolic gestures. We're talking about a fundamental reshaping of global power dynamics that will redefine NATO, challenge international law, and potentially trigger responses from Russia and China that could destabilize the entire Arctic region. And trust me, the panicked reactions from Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen, Greenland's Premier Mute Borup Egede, and Defense Minister Troels Lund Poulsen tell you everything about how unprepared they were for this moment. The stakes have never been higher, the geopolitical consequences more severe, and Denmark's position more impossible. Let me fill you in on why Greenland has become the most critical piece of real estate on the planet, and why the United States just decided it couldn't wait any longer. Here's the scoop on Greenland's strategic value. This isn't just a massive island covered in ice. This is the geographic linchpin between North America and Europe, home to the US Thule Air Base, one of the most critical early warning and missile defense installations in the Western Hemisphere. According to defense experts, whoever controls Greenland controls surveillance over the entire Arctic, dominates northern Atlantic shipping lanes, and positions forces within striking distance of both Russia and emerging Arctic passages. Greenland has been under Danish sovereignty with substantial autonomy since 1979. The population is roughly 56,000, predominantly Inuit, with their own government led by Premier Mute Borup Egede. Denmark handles foreign affairs and defense, but Greenland has been pushing harder for full independence, complicating an already complex sovereignty situation. But climate change has transformed the equation entirely. As Arctic ice melts, new shipping routes are opening that could cut thousands of miles off current trade paths between Asia and Europe. Rare earth minerals critical for technology and defense applications are becoming accessible. Russia and China have been aggressively expanding Arctic presence, building bases, deploying icebreakers, and establishing claims that directly threaten Western strategic interests. The timeline acceleration has been dramatic. Intelligence reports over recent months indicated increased Chinese investment in Greenlandic infrastructure. Russian military exercises in Arctic waters reached unprecedented levels, and NATO assessments concluded that Denmark lacks the military capacity to defend Greenland against determined adversaries. According to sources within the Pentagon, the decision was made that diplomatic negotiations had reached their limit. Every day of delay meant increased foreign entrenchment that could become permanent. According to military strategists, Greenland represents what defense analysts call strategic inevitability, territory so critical that allowing it to fall under adversarial influence would fundamentally compromise American security architecture. The benefits break down into several categories, each alone justifying the operation, but combined creating overwhelming strategic imperative. First, military positioning. Thule Air Base currently operates under agreements with Denmark, but those agreements could theoretically be revoked or renegotiated under pressure from adversaries. Direct US sovereignty eliminates that vulnerability entirely. According to defense infrastructure assessments, Greenland could host expanded missile defense systems, hypersonic weapon detection arrays, and forward-deployed forces that would give the United States unparalleled Arctic dominance. Second, rare earth minerals and resources. Greenland contains massive deposits of rare earth elements essential for advanced electronics, weapon systems, and clean energy technology. China currently controls roughly 80% of global rare earth production, creating a strategic choke point that threatens Western technological independence. According to geological surveys, Greenland's deposits could supply Western needs for decades, breaking Chinese monopoly and securing supply chains critical for both economic and military applications. Third, shipping route control. As Arctic ice continues melting, the Northwest Passage and Northern Sea Route are becoming viable commercial shipping lanes that could revolutionize global trade. Control over Greenland means control over access, regulation, and security of these routes. According to maritime experts, nations controlling Arctic passages will dominate 21st century commerce the way nations controlling traditional choke points like the Suez Canal dominated 20th century trade. Fourth, climate and scientific research. Greenland's ice sheet contains climate data going back hundreds of thousands of years. Research stations positioned there provide unmatched insight into global climate patterns, weather prediction, and environmental changes that affect agriculture, disaster preparedness, and long-term strategic planning. Reports from Pentagon sources describe the operation as meticulously planned over months. According to military logistics experts, the deployment involves amphibious ready groups, Marine expeditionary units, Air Force transport wings, and Coast Guard icebreakers. The forces are described as sufficient to establish presence and deter interference, rather than designed for combat operations against Denmark. The goal is territorial claim, not invasion of an ally. Talk about unprecedented. This represents the first time since World War II that the United States has moved to claim territory through military deployment rather than diplomatic agreement or purchase. Now, this puts Denmark in what might be the most impossible diplomatic and military position any NATO ally has faced in the alliance's history. Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen is facing a nightmare scenario. Denmark is a small nation of roughly 6 million people with limited military capacity. Its relationship with the United States isn't just important, it's foundational to Danish security. Denmark depends on NATO, which means it depends on American military commitment for protection against potential Russian aggression. According to sources close to the Danish government, Frederiksen is in full crisis mode because every option available is catastrophic. If Denmark attempts military resistance against US forces, it would be futile. Denmark's entire military couldn't contest American deployment even if it wanted to. More critically, military resistance against the United States would shatter NATO, potentially leaving Denmark isolated and vulnerable to Russian pressure. If Denmark acquiesces to American actions, it loses Greenland, faces domestic political collapse as the government would be seen as surrendering territory without a fight, and establishes a precedent that larger powers can simply take what they want from smaller allies without consequence. Defense Minister Troels Lund Poulsen, often referred to as Nielsen in shorthand, faces the military dimension of this crisis. According to defense analysts, Denmark's options for military response range from non-existent to suicidal. The Danish military is designed for peacekeeping operations and territorial defense against non-peer adversaries, not for contesting American force projection. Reports from Copenhagen describe emergency cabinet meetings running continuously, with officials frantically contacting NATO allies, reaching out to EU partners, and trying to determine if any coalition could pressure the United States to reverse course. According to diplomatic sources, the responses have been sympathetic but ultimately unhelpful. No nation is willing to directly confront the United States over Arctic territory, especially when the strategic arguments for American control have merit. The NATO fracture risk is real and severe. If the alliance cannot resolve this crisis without either legitimizing unilateral territorial seizure or fragmenting over conflicting interests, the entire post-World War II security architecture faces existential questions about its viability. Here's where it gets even more complex. Greenland itself is not a passive object in this crisis. It has its own government, its own interests, and its own political trajectory that complicates everything. Premier Mute Borup Egede leads Greenland's autonomous government and has been actively pushing for full independence from Denmark. According to political analysts familiar with Greenlandic politics, independent sentiment has been growing for years, driven by desires for self-determination, control over natural resources, and frustration with Denmark's historical treatment of Greenlandic populations. But American military deployment has thrown Greenland's independence movement into chaos. The scenario Greenlandic leaders envisioned was negotiated independence from Denmark, potentially with close partnership with the United States, but on Greenlandic terms. What's happening instead is a U.S. military operation that bypasses Greenlandic sovereignty entirely. According to sources within Greenland's government, Egede is torn between multiple impossible positions. If Greenland welcomes American control, it trades Danish sovereignty for American sovereignty without achieving the independence it has fought for. If Greenland resists, it faces the reality that it has no military capacity to do so and risks alienating the United States, which could provide economic and security benefits Denmark never could. Reports describe emergency sessions of Greenland's parliament, with members divided between those who see American control as potentially beneficial economically, those who view it as colonialism replacing colonialism, and those who simply don't know how to navigate a situation that has evolved faster than political consensus can form. The complication is that Greenland's push for independence has always depended on economic viability, the ability to sustain itself without Danish subsidies. American control could theoretically provide that economic foundation through resource development, infrastructure investment, and military spending, but it would also mean Greenland never achieves true sovereignty, instead becoming an American territory. Most significantly, Greenlandic public opinion is divided and being shaped in real time by events unfolding faster than democratic processes can handle. This isn't a situation where Greenland's population was consulted, where referendums were held, where consent was established. This is external powers making decisions about Greenland's future, while Greenlandic voices struggle to be heard over the geopolitical noise. Now here's the kicker. The US move on Greenland is causing immediate geopolitical shockwaves beyond just the Denmark-US-Greenland triangle, with implications that could reshape global order. NATO allies are reacting with what diplomatic sources describe as horrified paralysis. According to reports from European capitals, governments are caught between recognizing the strategic logic of American control over Greenland and the terrifying precedent that might allow makes right within the alliance. The United Kingdom, France, and Germany have issued statements calling for dialogue while conspicuously avoiding condemnation of US actions. According to diplomatic analysts, this reflects the reality that European NATO members depend on American military commitment and cannot risk alienating Washington over territory they have no ability to influence. But the silence is telling. Every European nation is calculating what this means for their own security arrangements. If the United States can unilaterally claim Greenland from Denmark, what prevents similar actions elsewhere if American strategic interests demand it? Russia's reaction is being watched closely. According to intelligence assessments, Moscow views American control of Greenland as a direct threat to Russian Arctic ambitions and a signal that the gloves are off in Arctic competition. Reports indicate increased Russian military activity along Arctic borders and statements from Kremlin officials describing the situation as American imperialism that justifies Russian countermeasures. China's response is equally significant. According to analysts tracking Chinese foreign policy, Beijing sees the Greenland operation as validation of their own approach to territorial claims. That strategic necessity justifies assertive action regardless of international legal niceties. Chinese state media is reportedly framing the situation as evidence of American hypocrisy on sovereignty issues. Global markets are reacting with volatility, reflecting uncertainty about Arctic stability, shipping route security, and the potential for great power conflict in a region that had been relatively stable. Energy markets particularly are watching whether Russian responses could affect oil and gas flows, or whether Arctic shipping disruptions could impact supply chains. According to economists specializing in Arctic development, if the situation stabilizes with American control, Greenland could see massive infrastructure investment that transforms regional economics. But if the crisis triggers prolonged instability or military confrontation, the costs would be catastrophic. So, let's break down exactly how this operation is taking place on the ground, because the mechanics reveal the planning and the stakes. First, according to military sources, US forces are establishing control over key infrastructure points. Thule Air Base, already under American operation, has been reinforced with additional personnel and equipment. Ports capable of handling military vessels are being secured. Airfields are being prepared for expanded operations. Second, reports indicate that civilian authorities in Greenland are being approached with what's being described as cooperation frameworks, essentially structures for American administration that maintain some Greenlandic autonomy while establishing clear U.S. sovereignty. The messaging is reportedly focused on economic benefits, infrastructure development, and security guarantees rather than military occupation language. Third, according to Pentagon statements, the forces deployed are described as peacekeeping and security operations rather than invasion forces. The distinction matters for international law and NATO politics. The framing is that America is securing territory from potential hostile takeover, not seizing it from an ally. The timeline is moving rapidly. According to operational assessments, the United States aims to establish irreversible facts on the ground before diplomatic pressure can organize effectively. Once American forces are entrenched, removing them becomes exponentially more difficult both politically and militarily. Denmark's limited options are becoming clearer by the hour. Military resistance is off the table. Legal challenges through international courts would take years and have uncertain outcomes. Diplomatic isolation of the United States is impossible given American power and the strategic arguments supporting the action. The most likely outcome, according to analysts, is some form of negotiated settlement where Denmark formally cedes sovereignty in exchange for economic compensation, security guarantees, and face-saving diplomatic language about partnership and mutual interest. So here's the deal. The United States has launched a military operation to claim Greenland, deploying forces to establish territorial control in what represents the most dramatic Arctic power play in modern history. This isn't just about one island or even just Arctic resources. It's about the fundamental question of whether strategic necessity justifies unilateral action, whether might makes right in the 21st century, and whether the international system based on sovereignty and alliance commitments can survive when powerful nations decide rules don't apply to them. Denmark is in panic mode because every option leads to catastrophic consequences. Frederiksen can't fight and can't surrender without destroying her government and Denmark's international standing. Nielsen can't defend territory Denmark lacks the capacity to protect. They're watching in real time as geopolitical forces beyond their control reshape the map. Greenland is caught between independence aspirations and the reality of becoming an American territory. Egede and Greenland's government are scrambling to salvage some agency in a situation where decisions are being made about their future without their meaningful consent. So, watch how NATO responds as the alliance faces its greatest internal crisis since its founding. Watch whether Russia and China use this precedent to justify their own territorial assertions. Watch whether global markets stabilize or panic as Arctic competition escalates. The stakes couldn't be higher, the geopolitical consequences more severe, or the international order more threatened. We're witnessing either the beginning of a new era where strategic competition overrides diplomatic norms, or a crisis that will be resolved through mechanisms that preserve alliance structures and sovereignty principles. The next 48 hours will determine which future we're heading toward.